Well, then we'll go ahead and say good morning and hello to everybody. Welcome to the Art and Technology Rochester 1.5 Breakfast Zoom and NYSCA EMF and VAP and co-host Rochester Contemporary Art Center. So it's Friday, December 18th, and I should probably also introduce myself. I'm Karen Helmerson, Director of Electronic Media, Film, and Visual Art at the New York State Council on the Arts. And I'd like to thank our co-host Blue Cease of Rochester Contemporary Art Center and Galen Joseph Hunter of Wave Farm, our NYSCA regrant partner. And we're very happy to have with us as well our council member, Deborah Ronan, and NYSCA staff, Fabiana Chu Rinaldi, NYSCA program officer, and my colleague in electronic media and film, Arian Blanco, program director, individual artists and special arts services, and Leah Capotorto, our NYSCA communications associate. And then following these introductions, we'll have brief updates from NYSCA and Wave Farm, and then we'll turn it over to Blue for our presentation and discussion. So that's how our meeting will basically flow this morning. First, a little background on Rochester 1.5. In March of 2019, NYSCA held an FY20 guidelines seminar at Rocco, followed by an art and technology reception in the main gallery. There were nearly 40 people attending from Alfred to Buffalo to Ithaca to Cooperstown. And thus, the Rochester 1.5 was born from the driving radius, which was 1.5 hours from these towns and from other towns. And of course, including the local arts community of Rochester was attending. So we had intended to rejoin in person in Rochester before now, but it is wonderful to be with you again. And thank you all for joining us today. So I'll jump to some the NYSCA updates. And this time of year has always been busy for staff in the process of reviewing and refining our guidelines. We do this every year toward the end of the calendar. And it is important that every year the guidelines can and do change as a result. So you'll want to keep your eyes on our website for all of this. We've also posted recently, and some of you may have received an email from Mara Manis, our executive director, already this morning. 2020 updates for December, and again, you can find these on our website at arts.ny.gov, especially to help direct your eye under the drop down under grants FAQs for current grantees and applicants. And as we navigate this challenging time, NYSCA will continue to support the field. And this is something we want to make clear, and we're very happy to be able to say that. And we anticipate introducing, or rather announcing, in the FY21 grant recipients in the first quarter of 2021. You may already know the state is contending with a $16 billion loss. And without federal aid, must reduce spending to balance the state budget. As a result, if NYSCA's grants budget is reduced, all grant awards for FY21, both new and multi-year, will be subject to this reduction. Looking ahead to FY22, we anticipate our grant application period will begin towards the end of the first quarter of 2021. Naturally, we are already receiving inquiries about this, but again, can't emphasize enough, keep an eye on our website. Please check it frequently. And if you would like to receive NYSCA updates, you can join our mailing list by emailing publicaffairs@nysca. Whoops, sorry, that's an old slip, at arts.ny.gov. And that's public.affairs@arts.ny.gov. And of course, you can email me, Karen Helmerson, karen.helmerson@arts.ny.gov, with any questions you might have. I think that, or public affairs. Leah Capoporto is with us, and Leah basically, I think, handles our public affairs. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit there. But I'm going to turn now to Galen for updates from Wave Farm, and just say thank you all again for joining us this morning.
Hi, everyone. So just quickly, because I think we have some MAAF Forward Fund grantees on the line here. Um, just a reminder that those final reports for that grant funding opportunity is December 31st. The final report form is super simple and will not take you long. I just shared the direct link to the place on the Wayfarm site to find how to submit your form via chat. And then as a regrant partner of NYSCA, we'll be following NYSCA's lead in terms of when Wavefarm can post anything about our schedule for the Media Arts Assistance Fund in 2021. But we're poised to act quickly as soon as we're able to. And I think that's it.
So Blue, I think it's over to you now.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Karen and Galen, for organizing these events throughout the state. I know that this is a regular occurrence, but we're happy to have you all here in upstate this time. Thank you to Deborah and all the staff at NYSCA for supporting our art communities in Central and Western New York. Just seems like it was a lifetime ago that we last met, especially considering now we're 9 months into life with COVID. I was originally interested in doing some kind of an organizational check-in in the region, maybe at like the quarter mark or the 6-month mark. And now I think in retrospect, that would have been particularly bleak. I think obviously for all of us, there's so much uncertainty, and we can talk about that today. But at ROCO here, we're open for limited access. And we could any day slip into the red zone and would have to close. With the vaccine news, it seems to me there's this tiny little bit of light somewhere at the end of the tunnel. So I wonder if now at this 9-month mark, maybe we're already able to reflect on some of the ways in which our organizations will be permanently changed by all this. Sort of the before COVID and the after COVID ways in which we were and will be operating. Obviously, so much of this is in flux now, but I really believe, and many of you heard this from me last time we gathered here. I believe, now more than ever, there's such a value in our small organizations, connecting regularly, sharing, and possibly when it fits and works appropriately to collaborate. I think we've seen real examples of how COVID has sort of shrunk the world, and perhaps made it as easy to collaborate with an arts org on a Zoom event, an arts org that's based in California, as it is to collaborate with our partners down the street or down the thruway. But I really think that that's all terrific. But this is a region, and geography and local culture matter. So for so many reasons, not the least of which is that we all may be similarly facing budget constraints and financial headwinds related to New York State. So for so many reasons, I think it's important we collaborate and connect like this. And in general today, as Karen mentioned, and I was prompted in the emails, we're here to generally share our experiences of 2020, how we've adjusted, how organizations have changed and perhaps significantly transitioned online. We can offer each other suggestions and reflections, and talk about ways to support our peers in the region. This is a relatively informal conversation, and we'll just sort of gauge and manage the conversation so that everyone has an opportunity to share and speak and has time to contribute. Please definitely use the chat function to maximum benefit for everyone. We are recording the conversation. Alyssa and myself will be, monitoring and managing any chat things or hands raised or things like that if there's a lot of conversation. And I've been in touch with a few of our peers and friends across the region to develop a couple specific questions / situations to mention to the group in the hope that it will, prompt some responses and ideas, dialogue surrounding similar experiences from others. So we can get into those in just a moment. Again, feel free to chime in and share. And for now, I think we can, people can just simply raise their voice, turn their microphone on, and go ahead and say, I'd like to respond to that. If the conversation seems crowded, we can, shift over to using the hand raise function. I'm sure everyone is, adapting with all the Zoom functionalities now. But before we get to those, I want to ask everyone to introduce themselves, name your organization that you're representing, and also, tell us something that you've struggled with or something that you've learned in the last 9 months. We'll just go around real quickly. So name your organization, and something that you've struggled with or something you've learned in the last 9 months. And for efficiency and to keep things moving, I will just read down the speaker list here. Let's begin with, let's go back to Galen.
Okay, let's see. Galen Joseph Hunter from Wave Farm, as I think you guys know. Let's see, we did have to stop our residency program for summer 2020. It was certainly like the biggest change for us in response to COVID. But our radio station continued to be lively, dynamic, 24/7, and we transitioned approximately 100 different volunteer programmers into home studio environments in order to keep our radio station sounding live and local and dynamic. And that was a pretty terrific experience that came out of this challenge.
Great. Alyssa, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I am Alyssa Reagan. I'm the exhibitions assistant here at Rochester Contemporary Art Center. I'm just administering the Zoom today, and as Blue mentioned, he and I will be in the chat to monitor any comments or questions you have. Thank you.
Paul?
Hi, I'm Paul Allen, representing Image Out, Rochester's LGBTQ Film Festival. What we've struggled with this year is definitely energy. It's like it comes and goes in waves of enthusiasm and just exhaustion. We had our board meeting on Monday and everyone was just like, it's the year end, but we feel like totally swamped. But on the plus side, what we learned, people are really hungry for community, and our grassroots film festival is all about building community. And even with the challenges of being online, like that's something that's still there. And I think it speaks to what Blue was talking about earlier, about how we're a regional grouping and like we're building community.
Joseph?
Hey, Joseph.
Hi, Joseph Shear, Institute for Electronic Arts at Alfred University. I guess the thing we struggled with is, since we're at a educational institution, we were able to open up, but we had a lot of moving targets and things kept changing. So a lot of rescheduling, reshuffling and that. So we were able to bring in a number of our residents, and they had very productive, and they were very thankful to be able to come. We had stringent guidelines, for safety and health. They had to check in every day with public safety, temperature checks and things like that. So we managed to get through the year with getting maybe half of our residents, a little over half of our residents that were scheduled and then rescheduled. We still have a number that we're moving into next year.
Thank you, Matt, and then John Massier after that.
I assume me, Matt.
Yes, you, Matt.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt DeTurk. I'm the Events and Special Programming Coordinator at the Little Theater, here with a couple other of my colleagues from the Little Theater. I think one of the biggest challenges, aside from the usual thing everyone is dealing with in terms of, just the getting everybody up to speed in terms of our membership and audiences and tech, is also finding the new ways that audiences are now going through the progression of what they're looking for and what they want over the course of the year. We're no longer just dealing with like the seasonal changes, but also in terms of earlier on, some people very much wanted no video. And now we're finding very, very much that a lot of audiences for group chats want video because now they're starved for that kind of interaction. So it's been interesting to see those challenges.
So John and then Susan.
Yeah, hi, I'm John Massier. I'm the visual arts curator at Hall Walls in Buffalo. I should mention in passing that today, December 18th, is our 46th birthday. Hall Walls began in 1974, December 18th, with a talk by artist Robert Irwin. And that was the very first event we ever had. We have struggled with the same things everyone else has. We're an organization that likes to think that we exist in real life. We want people to come to our venue, to come to events, to come to openings, and that's been, you know, the greatest loss is that congregation of community. However, we've managed to keep the gallery open for gallery hours since we came back in July. Prior to that, we were able to live stream our exhibition that was in the gallery on our website. We've commissioned live streams for music programming and for video programming. Although I would say they're sort of modestly successful, and I think people really want to come to real things. But in other areas like our twice yearly drawing rally and silent auction, which had to go online in a Zoom version, our annual auction, which we just did, you know, they've been really successful. And about 6 years ago, we started an end of year annual giving campaign. And we take it with great optimism that this year's annual campaign to date is the most successful ever. So our community and our audience, they all know the boat we're in and they all want to see us survive and prosper. And so we see a lot of positive signs out of a terrible year at the same time.
Susan, then Nicole.
Okay, I'm Susan Rogers. I'm from WXXI in Rochester, New York, and also the Little Theater. And I think this year it was so sobering in that we had come out of a year of construction and renovation and restoration of this wonderful theater. And we opened on February 14th. And we started with the NYSCA meeting. Some of you may have been there, and it was a wonderful thing. And we closed 1 month later, and we have not really been open since. The one thing we have been able to do, we did use the theater as a media production space, because while we at WXXI and the theater through its virtual cafe were doing a lot of music performances and virtual experiences with performers at home in their cell phones, doing a home stage thing, we knew that groups couldn't work together and the sound quality, people were getting tired of that. So we did actually bring, we raised some funds and brought 4 performers into the theater at each different times and put them out on television and on the radio and as well as streamed. And we are looking for ways to do that more. We know people are hungry. And I'll give you a small example. We had done some things, we had done the Little in the Lot, in the parking lot for a while when the weather was okay. But we just started looking at the rules and said, we think we can rent the theater through private rentals for just a few people. Matt did very stringent guidelines. We sold out of our 18 spots in an hour. I think it was an hour. So people are hungry. They are hungry for places to go. They're hungry for places to participate with the arts. On the other hand, I also believe that this is going to change cinema. It is going to change the movie-going experience, probably never to go back to what it was. And we need to be ready for that, and we need to be engaged with helping make sure that our audiences are getting what they want and what our communities need. And I feel fortunate to have a staff that's really working on that.
Nicole and then Rebecca.
I'm going to take the risk that there aren't like 5 other Nicoles on this call and assume it's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Cook. I'm the executive director at the Western New York Book Arts Center. Susan, I can totally feel your pain because we were under construction all of last year as well and continued into this year. So it was a little bit bittersweet to not be able to show off our renovations with our audience. I would say in the beginning, we struggled to translate our programming to the virtual space because the nature of letterpress and screen print and other, print and book oriented art forms is that they are very hands-on by nature and their sensory experiences. Factor that in with the degree to which they are equipment dependent, and we really had a challenge in front of us. But we started by adapting our printing partners outreach program to a virtual form. And we were able to deliver art making kits to each participating child. And so they were able to continue from home. Many of them had already switched to a Zoom school, so they were able to get on pretty quickly with the technology if that was available to them. And our teaching artists were just so incredibly committed to delivering a really engaging and exciting program that the surveys coming back from parents and families are just glowing over the experience. So we took that and ran with it throughout the year, and we've since adapted that format to other, adult-based classes, especially in bookbinding and origami, things that are pretty easy to translate without too many specialty tools. And while we have been reopened for parts of the year, the nature of Erie County is such that we dip into different zones very regularly, and it's tough to be able to plan things too far into the future. So we've seen great retail business, people coming in to visit our shop and take tours of our space, but we've been reluctant to plan too many in-person classes just by nature of not being able to see very far into the future. We reimagined our big liquor and letterpress fundraiser as an online sale of boxes filled with goods made by book arts artisans, as well as artists that we support through our consignment program in the shop. And actually now our greatest struggle is keeping up with the demand. So we found that our brand new website that we had fortunately built last year with a full rebrand and total modernization came in handy in that we were able to list a lot of our own artwork and that of our consignment artists on the website. But now we're actually sort of struggling with staff capacity because many of our volunteers are older folks who are vulnerable, or just the nature of the fact that we can only have 10 people in the building at a time due to capacity limits is tough. So keeping up with the number of orders that are coming in, including custom printing orders, online gift sales, things of that nature, has actually become pretty tough. So we are excited and very, very fortunate to have such robust support from our community. But if anything, we just have to keep up with the orders.
So Rebecca and then Lawrence Burroughs.
Hi, hey everyone, I'm Rebecca. I'm from the Institute for Electronic Arts as well, working on the media side of things. Shutdown for us, I felt, was an opportunity to catch up. I redid the website. It was overdue, so that was really great to have the time to do that. Also, bringing the artists back really, enforced the value that we provide to artists in the field. It's a big deal to have them come up, just be able to work after, particularly we have a lot of artists from downstate come up, like, oh, just to have that time and space and I don't know, that sort of moment of clarity was really reinforced that project that we do at the IEA. Also, live streaming. We started live streaming. Excited about that. I think that'll probably be a permanent feature and something that we've also, the artists who have come the second half of the year, worked with them on discovering that as part of their own practice. So I think that even though we did shut down, I think we made a lot of it, as well as able to do some catching up on the VR grant, which hopefully I feel pretty good. Next year we'll be able to get that available for artists to come in and work with. So overall, different, but also, I don't know. It reinforced values and sort of what we provide to artists in the field.
Lawrence and then Jessica Johnson. Lawrence, you're muted.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Am I unmuted? Okay, good. Well, good morning, everyone. And Lawrence Burroughs from Executive Director of SEPA Gallery, at least for another 2 weeks or a week, and then I retire after almost 30 years. As everyone else has recognized, it's been a challenging year. We had to do a lot of, as Elizabeth Williams, who is on this call too, is her favorite term for what we're doing is pivoting, and a lot of pivoting. And we took Stacy Robinson's barbershop project, which would have been all hands on for the community, and an exhibition of his and reimagined it as 12 billboards throughout the region. And when I offered it to him, he just said, "Oh my God, I've always wanted to do billboards." So we worked with him on that, and then we also have done a couple of exhibitions where we had limited, attendance, but actually really good attendance. You just had to time it out. But now under the Orange Code, we're by appointment only. But still, we're getting traffic, and so that's good. And people are hungry to, see artwork and to see it live and not just on the internet. And we have done some live streaming, artist studio visits, as well as Elizabeth had imagined this idea, which was really hugely successful, when words are not enough, and put out a call towards the beginning of the pandemic for just to submit photos to express what it felt like, in their community. And we got about 70 submissions from all over the state and all over the world, actually. And then Elizabeth put them into set it to music and put it into a short film, and that's available on our website, and it's really quite poignant. And so, like everyone, we're doing what we can to stay relevant and stay active in the community. And we also did, we pivoted our youth education program, our big project, Photography Works, which was a year-long project, which was to end in an exhibition. And we couldn't do that. It was during the pause. So we pivoted again towards bus shelters. And each one of the students made their own artwork for bus shelters. We had 20 bus shelters throughout the region as well. And that was very exciting for them. In fact, more exciting than an exhibition, I think. So that's it.
Jessica, and then Leah.
Hello, I'm Jessica Johnston, and I'm the Assistant Director and Curator of Collections at Visual Studies Workshop in Rochester, New York. And I see we have a robust representation from VSW here today, so I'm going to defer to Tara and Tate to talk about how we handled residencies and screenings in the film program. But I'll just say that it was pretty good to see how resilient and flexible we are as an organization, and how everybody here has been. But it was pretty tough when we were closed to not be able to come to work. And, it's really great to be able to be back in our space. So I'm going to that's all I'll say for now, but it's good to see everybody.
Leah, and then Darian.
Hi, I'm Leah, and I recently joined NYSCA. And something I have missed over the past few months is going and seeing live performances and exhibits. And as an artist myself, I have missed performing and collaborating with my peers. And with NYSCA, it's been really great to have my coworkers on Zoom and to meet them virtually. And for innovative online opportunities by our artists have been really spectacular to see.
Darian, and then Ellen.
Hi, I'm Darian Lehman. I'm here representing Rochester Community Media Center. We run the public access television station here in Rochester, RCTV, and we also run a community radio station, WXIR Blue. Thank you for looping me into this virtual breakfast this morning. The pandemic has posed a lot of challenges to us. I would say one of the things that it certainly did was to accelerate our efforts to go remote with production. I, for example, offer podcasting classes here. So, a lot of that stuff was already in process. And so our community radio producers were able to do some of that, as Galen also mentioned. So that was, I think, an opportunity, but it's also kind of underscored the digital divide and the racial disparities in access. And in fact, you know, since a large part of what we do at RCTV is youth programming, that became especially clear over the last several months that it's obviously preferable to have students come in person and do all the youth programs here, but you know, we weren't entirely comfortable doing that at various points here in the ebb and flow of the pandemic. So, you know, as we kind of try to project ourselves out over the next year, you know, there's some questions about how, you know, if we go remote, how many students will just be able to just drop off, right? Because they don't have the kind of access to high-speed internet at home or technology that otherwise here at RCTV they would have. So, you know, that's a major question mark and issue for us. You know, I think we've tried to you know, like I said, speed up some of the remote production stuff. Our annual meeting, which is usually a big in-person gala, we did all virtual this year with people zooming in from all over the country. And, you know, so in a way it was a chance for us to kind of double down on some of the work that we already had. But, you know, as a community, the community access point for media, that's definitely been one of the things we're still working on, figuring out how to provide that service. And we feel that you know, through collaborations with local health organizations, through PSA campaigns and this kind of thing, we can still do a lot of the important work that we're positioned to do, but it certainly has been a challenge.
Ellen and then Marion.
There, I'm just going to use my space bar. So I'm Ellen Pope with Glimmerglass Film Days, which is a program about SEGO 2000. We are normally a 4 or 5 day film festival in November. In person is a huge community event at a time when you know, there's really not much to do in a rural area. We bring out our film festival and we have all sorts of fun food and parties and stuff like that. And we have filmmakers who come from around the world to just discuss their arts. It's not an industry festival by any means. It's really focused on the film itself. So this year we had to pivot. We use that word too much, I think, these days. We had to pivot to an online only festival. I am not technologically adept. So that was quite a challenge. Especially because a lot of our audience, I think probably 60 or 70% is over 55. We have some well into their 80s. And so technology was also a challenge, as is broadband in our area. But we managed to make it happen. We were lucky that our community really pulled out the stops and supported it financially, as well as, you know, purchasing passes. One of the benefits was that people could purchase passes for people in other states, for family members, or they wanted to give gifts. So it expanded the reach of our festival. And so in terms of PR and attracting potential audience members for future festivals, it was great. We had people from 31 states and 5 countries taking part in our film festival. We were able to get about 10 or 11 filmmakers who could participate, where normally it would have been hard to bring them in. They were several of them were already on shoots for other films, but they participated in either live or recorded interviews. And you know, that was good. What was hard is losing the connection with the audience and getting their instant feedback as to what films they liked, what films they didn't like, hearing what questions were raised by films when they would ask filmmakers. So we really missed that, as well as sort of the social and economic activity that comes to the village when Film Days happens. I know economically, you know, we had $33,000 in direct expenses that weren't spent on, you know, catering and venue rentals and things like that. And that's a big economic hit in our village. So that was something that really, you know, that hit me. I don't really want this to happen again next year. Next year, we will probably do a hybrid festival because we had several audience members who don't like to drive after dark, so they wouldn't go out for films, but they really appreciated being able to be a part. So we may try to do a hybrid next year to pull folks in. We'll see where we are, but you know, it was quite a learning experience. I now know how to build an online platform for film using Cinesend. If anybody wants to know, just let me know. And I got really good at troubleshooting for people over the phone. But I myself watched about 5 films because I was doing tech support most of the time. So looking forward to getting back to normal.
Marion and then Rosemary.
All right, my name is Marion. I'm also with the Little. I think personally for me, the hardest part this year was all the false starts. We were prepping the entire space to reopen and then nope, staying home again. So that I think was personally the toughest part. But as Susan mentioned, we did do a lot of other things. The Little and the Lot I think was a great thing that we did. Definitely kept me busy. We are also kicking off our private rentals next week, which I think will be a really, really fun and like, it's just going to be a better use of my time, I think, and I'll be able to leave the house because that's going to be great. And I just want to say that like, I am so thankful for my coworkers. Everyone's done such a great job this year, and like keeping each other up, keeping each other's spirits up, because I think that's the biggest thing, you know, when you're stuck at home, when you feel isolated, even even as people who work for these organizations that are supposed to bring the community together, it gets real tough. So I gotta say, I've got some of the best coworkers I could ask for. So
Rosemary and then Brett.
I'm alone down here in the studio, so. I'm Rosemary Williams, Education Director at the Western New York Book Art Center. We heard from Nicole earlier. I'll just do a little bit more of a deep dive into how we transitioned our very hands-on and specific classes into the virtual realm. I also, I think it was maybe Ellen who said that she's not wonderful at technological things. I work with like 100-year-old presses, so that's the technology I'm used to. But I attended a lot of great webinars and things, learning more about Zoom. Some actually put on by affiliates of NYSCA, which was really helpful. And then we were also able to receive a few grants, one from Wave Farm to purchase equipment, including a ring light, which I thought was really only for like YouTubers and Instagram influencers. So to really set up our teaching artists for success teaching virtually. What was interesting about then the Zoom platform was us being able to record the classes. We host sequential classes 8 to 10 weeks long. So while we love for students to come every week, sometimes with the family it's not possible. They might miss one. So feedback from family was that the recorded classes were really helpful to be able to like look back on, or maybe they have an extra hour where they just want their kids to like be doing something and they can rewatch the class. So that was some great feedback we got. In addition to the live classes, we also did some like recorded DIY workshops where similar to like a YouTube tutorial, but with the kits that we sell in our shop. So it was a way for us to raise funds, but also keep an education component with it. And then a little bit of, you know, workshop and DIY at home. Those were either recorded by myself, our teaching artists, or we actually brought in an intern too who knew a little bit more about iMovie and was able to make some really fun videos. Yeah, and then just looking forward to the future, I'm thinking more of like a hybrid, you know, the virtual recorded brings a really great accessibility for folks who aren't able to necessarily visit our space. We've had
folks attend our artist talks from like Colorado and California, and folks across New York State attending our kids' classes. We had some folks from like the Albany area join our classes on Wednesday. So it's broadened our reach, but also kind of honed in our community here in Buffalo too, which is really great to see. So while it's been challenging, we like to say we're resourceful here. So yeah, thank you. Excited to be here today. Thanks everyone.
Brett, and then Arian.
Hi, my name is Brett Bozzard. I'm the executive director of Cinemapolis. We're a 5-screen art house movie theater in Ithaca. And yeah, like everybody else, pivoting is probably the overused term, but here we are. We probably the biggest challenge, I think, for us, for me personally, was facing the closure that we started in March, realizing that we have a small staff of about 12 people, but pretty much all of them, with the exception of me and one other person, are exclusively frontline staff people. So we really wanted to make sure we kept everyone whole. And so we have kept people on the payroll since we closed. And thanks to federal relief, grant seeking locally, and really just a great amount of individual support from members of our community who value our institution, we've been able to do that. I mean, I think we'll be looking at very closely at what this next COVID relief package looks like. But that's certainly one great thing that we've been able to do is keep our staff safe and healthy and not worried about economics while they're worried about their families staying healthy. So that's one great success. And this change to and shifting our programming offering to the virtual cinema world has certainly been interesting. I think lessons were learned early on, and I feel like we have a pretty solid platform to deliver that service now. And I think in that way, it's very much still in line with our core mission, which is to provide access to what we think are the best examples of the art of film for folks in Central New York. And one of the great things about this, it's really opened up opportunities to partner with other organizations in ways that we would never have been able to do before. So like we had a really successful world premiere of Opera Ithaca, which is a local sort of cutting edge opera company that decided to do a production of Gianni Schicchi, with Puccini's sort of comedic opera from 1918, set during another pandemic. And they did this great sort of Zoom-based but very cinematically produced capture of a production of that show, and we were the home platform for it. So hundreds of people from all over the world saw it, and were exposed to both Opera Ithaca and to our theater. So it was a great use of what we're all doing, which is we're all lemonade makers at this point. We've been handed the largest sack of lemons possible, and we're just squeezing away. So I think through things like that, and I think some permanent changes to the way we offer sort of value-added and talkback programming, because our Zoom conversations around film have been richer. They've been of a longer duration than usual, because we don't have to worry about clearing out an auditorium for the next program. So we've been working with many of our partners, like the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival, and some other folks in town, to offer online talkbacks and discussions. And I think the attendance and the actual engagement has been more successful than what we typically have in those rushed 20 minutes after a screening. So it's been certainly a learning opportunity there. And I think, there are certain things that we've developed that will remain part of our programming, in perpetuity, at the very least. And I just hope, I'm sure like many people, very much hoping that Save Our Stages gets included in the COVID bill that's about to be passed, so we can all continue to have these conversations in a way that's not extremely dire.
So Arian, and then Deborah.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. I mean, I think the biggest challenge was sort of from the NYSCA sort of perch, was realizing how things were going to be very different, longer than maybe we thought in the beginning. But that being said, in terms of what I've learned is the resiliency of our field, across art forms, across kinds of disciplines. And that's been really amazing.
Arian, were you finished? You muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I finished, yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. And then Elizabeth? Deborah, you're muted.
Okay.
Good.
Hi. Hello, everyone. Deborah Onen. I'm a council member at NYSCA and a believer and supporter in everything you all do. I want to thank Karen and her team for pulling this together with Blue, who knows and keeps in touch with so many of you in the area. I think the word is resourceful. And hearing how each and every one of you have been resourceful, my main message is that you share and continue to collaborate, finding ways to communicate with each other and share all of these great resourceful ideas. And I thank you all, and I just want to say again what Arian said. We should be proud of the world in which we work and the world in which we believe, the art world.
So Elizabeth and then Nilsson.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I won't say much because I'm masked. We have a gym in our building, so I like to double mask. I'm Elizabeth Meg Williams. I came on at SEPA as the development director about a week before the New York State pause order went into effect. So it's been stressful, but I'll say, actually, I think really invigorating, because when everything is changing, it's easy to get people on board with new things that they may have otherwise kind of pushed back on, like it's not the way we've always done it. And so I think when everything is changing, it's a great opportunity to really start looking for alternative ways of reaching people. And then the other, I'll just stay on the positive. The other positive thing has been working with other organizations and having chats like this and hearing about other people's ideas and revenue streams. And, I put it in the chat, but I absolutely loved Winnie Back's online shop, and that inspired us to, think about more things that we could sell online. And so it's just really been a great opportunity to connect and share ideas in a way that I think sometimes wouldn't have happened without all this stress and trauma. So anyway, thank you to everyone. It's good to see people's faces, and yeah.
So Nilsson and then Tara.
Hi, Blue, thanks. I'm Nelson Carroll. I'm a conversion lab technician at Visual Studies Workshop here in Rochester. I think you said Tara's next, so she'll be able to tell you all about what's been going on with the film screening, but we've moved everything online. It's been a challenge, but it's also been really nice to, continue working with artists and archivists and, pivoting to, doing different things with the website. And there's a lot more writing going on with the screenings, which is really nice. And it's just like it's a really helpful resource for people who wouldn't otherwise have access to, the space and coming into the screenings. But yeah, Tara will be able to, tell you everything you need to know about it.
Great. So Tara and then Tate. Tara, at least I cannot hear you. You're not muted, but I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear Tara? No.
He's now muted.
Now you're muted, Tara. You have a microphone that's not working, maybe? Maybe, I don't know if you have another mic you can hook up or anything like that. Maybe we could jump to Tate while you.
Hey, hello everyone. I'll speak to the residency activity at Visual Studies Workshop, which has been really interesting in a sense. We typically work with residents for about 30 days on site and help them develop whatever project they're meaning to in the process. What we've transitioned toward is a longer, expansive time period for those people who were doing virtual residencies. Oftentimes ended up in a publication of some kind. So we have, in essence, about double the number of artist publications coming out in 2021, more than expected because of that. And we've been able to work with artists for 6-7 months as opposed to our traditional kind of 30-day stint, which has been exciting because we get to know people on a deeper level, and we get to help them with their craft and resources support at a deeper level. So in terms of publications, that has been a really great thing and helped us to connect with people more broadly. Hopefully Tara has the mic thing sorted out and she can speak more toward film now.
I think she signed off. If you, Tate or Nilsson, want to text her, and maybe she'll sign back on and fill us in. In the meantime, maybe we can move on to Fabiana.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay. So I work at NYSCA. I work with Karen in the electronic media and film program and also in the museum program. And I've been there a while, and it's so nice to see all of you. I've spoken with you over the phone or in person. And so it's nice to see all of you and see that you are doing well. One of the pluses about this period of time is that I've been able to see more film that I couldn't attend before. So a lot more film. So I was able to participate in some of the film festivals that I couldn't have before. As you know, NYSCA has a very small travel budget. So, and we don't know what the status of it is now, but you know, being able to join some of your programming online has been really great. In one of the other online professional discussion groups that I've been involved, one of the consultants said something that kind of made sense to me. One of the things that we're thinking a lot about at NYSCA obviously is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how all of you have been doing work in that area. And obviously with the pandemic, all of those issues have come to the forefront even more so. But one of the things that the consultant said was our audience's lives are now different and our survival is tied to what's out there. So something to think about. Thank you.
So Melissa and then Ruth.
Hi everyone, good morning. So my name is Melissa. I'm from the Western New York Book Arts Center. To also mimic what Nicole and Rosemary said, doing a more deeper dive into the shop here. We house about 90 local artists in our shop. So a main priority of mine during the pandemic was to transition our shop into an online space, which was definitely a challenge for me, but I think I'm doing an okay job now. It was important to us to give that same opportunity of being able to showcase and sell these artists' wares, not only in person, but also online, to expand their audiences and also give them that opportunity while we were shut down during the pandemic. And we have seen a huge increase of our sales of our kits that we made this year. So we made various bookbinding and origami kits. And especially during the holiday season, those kits are just like flying off the shelves. So it's really exciting to see that people are really curious about being creative, and they're continuing to just create and make art at home, which is what we wanted. So that's great. And then also for our exhibition series, we did have an opening scheduled the day of shutdown back in March, which was very unfortunate, but that kind of got us thinking, and we were able to pivot, as they say, our exhibition series to more of a hybrid, both online and in-person model. So not only did we have the artwork showcased in our gallery here, but we also had a full gallery of high-res photos on our website. And every piece that was for sale in the show, we also made available for sale on our online site. So that was great. I mean, we've had sales from people in Chicago and all over the country. So that was really amazing to be able to see our audience expand in that way. Same with the artists too. They were able to do virtual tours of their studios at home. We did artist talks over Zoom. So it was really able to expand the artist outreach. And at the same time too, we kind of soft launched an idea of a studio gallery that we have here. So we had 2 artists working in our studio downstairs, both screen print and letterpress, and we had them showcasing the studio gallery that is located in our letterpress studio. So again, we were able to still use our space, have artists create work in our space, and then showcase that artwork. And again, same thing, we had the artwork shown both online and in person, and we saw a lot of attraction from all over the country and the state, so that was really exciting. And then, yeah, just to kind of put more positive vibes out there, what Paul was saying, that we've really noticed that there's a thirst for community, so we really pumped up our marketing and our outreach to kind of take that position of like, we are a colorful and quirky brand, and we want to be able to, you know, send that positivity and color and vibrancy out into the community to keep us all uplifted. There was definitely some dark times in Erie County that we had, and so being able to just like send off those positivity and that color into the community really helps to show us that we're all in this together. We're all pressing on together. So definitely a lot of positives from this year, and we feel really excited for what the future is going to bring.
Thank you. We lost Ruth, so can we go back to Tara? Do we have your mic?
Yeah, do you?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay, hi. Yeah, just briefly, thank you for your support. And I'll just echo the resilience that I'm hearing from a lot of people. It's been great to be part of this community during a very turbulent time. I think our challenges and what we've learned are tied together. How to be a better resource for our community in times of very deep social unrest here in Rochester and in the region. And so we've been able to organize our digital assets, create a remote network, and offer those assets in terms of the film and video collection specifically for artists and community groups to use. So we've done online screenings, outdoor screenings. We've built playlists on our website from our early video archive that support the Black Lives Matter movement, and offered and widened our net of community curators. So we have been able to kind of see more programming from the community level using the VSW's film and video collections. So all of that can be seen more on our website, but it wouldn't have been possible a year ago when we didn't really have the ability to, we have an in-house conversion lab, so we're actively converting media, getting it on our website and getting it into the hands of artists and community members, and that's through NYSCA support. So we really appreciate that, and we're full steam ahead.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for sharing. Did I miss anyone? If so, just turn on your mic and go for it. Okay, great. So I'm going to lead in with a little question and comment I have, probably specifically for programming venues that have been, recently open for a while. Here at ROCO, we opened again in September with a curated show called Trust But Verify. And so those are a mix of artists from the area and from beyond the region, two international artists and one regional artist here. And then we moved quickly into a member show, which, like John at Hallwalls and others, is kind of a staple of our program. So now we've been back up and open with sort of, 5 months of quote, normal exhibitions. And so my question is sort of, and my comment is really about audiences. We are finding that like some of what you all said, our audiences are hungry and interested. Some of our diehard members are like really expressing to us their gratitude that we're trying to push through this, be open, maintain a level of normalcy. But that being said, with these 2 shows, 5 months of programming, what we're seeing right now is that our attendance is at about 30%. And that's including like 2 opening receptions where we had, you know, scheduled visits with dramatically limited attendance. So about 30 to 35% of our normal attendance during such a period of time. So I just wanted to kick that out and ask any other programming venues to elaborate on your experience with audiences, and possibly even any numbers if you have those to share.
Blue, I mean, I'm down the street from you, but I'm happy to mention at least the virtual thing, because obviously I can't speak to the theater itself being open. But I can say that from a virtual audience perspective, yeah, we have seen that virtual film sales have absolutely been, you know, generally very low. And I would say that the number we've been seeing is in most cases around 20% or less of what, you know, traditionally we were experiencing. In, I mean, obviously certain films do better than other films, so, you know, but I would say that generally, looking at, you know, trying to do apples to apples on similar things, it's been about 20% virtual compared to what it would have been physically. But that's why hoping to get any sort of physical nature we can.
Any other exhibition programming venues have anything to add to that, or we could move on?
Hey, Blue, Elizabeth here from SEPA. I will say, so obviously attendance is down, but we have never tracked before. And so now, because of contact tracing, we're tracking, which is a really big positive for us. And then in addition, you know, like everyone else has said, your reach, I think, gets a lot greater when you present online. We've had students take our classes from all over the world and that kind of stuff. But overall, our numbers, because we moved into public art, our numbers are like 10, 15 times greater than they've ever been. Because, you know, we could reach almost every person in the city of Buffalo through billboards and bus shelters. So, I mean, I don't always trust those numbers. They're coming from people who want you to buy the ad space, but it still is an incredible exposure that we would have never gotten with, you know, making or having people come to the gallery space. And then one show that we did to kind of test the waters on opening up, most, you know, over 80% of those people were first-time visitors. And so that was also a boo. I mean, you know, I know things are tough, but I just think that people are looking for it. And if we do it safely in a way that engages them, you know, a lot of people want to know what our safety measures are before they even think about coming in. And so I think for us, you know, we've seen a huge increase. Now the question is, can we keep that up if we go back to a more traditional model? So yeah, that's my chime in.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else along those lines, or we'll move on?
I just wanted to say in our programming, I feel like we've seen a little bit higher retention rate as opposed for folks who like attend more or longer of our programs. But then in the gallery space, because we don't have the openings, of course, we don't have as many people gathering together. It's more like spread out, but the engagements are a little deeper. So for our openings, instead of it being 3 hours, we had the artists come in and they were there all day. And then folks were able to sign up for an hour time slot. And then they actually got a chance to have a more meaningful conversation with the artists about the work while they were there. So that was a plus side to the fact that not as many people were able to come and view the work, either because they didn't want to venture out into our space or, you know, just lockdown, things like that. So.
Thank you. So before we move on, I noticed that Peter Jemison joined us. Peter, we already did a quick a round robin with everyone. Organization, and introduce yourself and tell us, something that the organization has struggled with or learned through this last 9 months.
Thanks, Blue. I manage Ganondagan State Historic Site in Victor, New York. But at Ganondagan, we have the Seneca Art and Culture Center, a building that opened in 2015, which has both gallery space, some permanent exhibits. It also has archival space. It also has an orientation theater, classrooms, an auditorium, and we have a fully recreated Seneca bark longhouse out on the grounds. We have 569 acres with hiking trails, a mountain bike trail that connects to ours from a mountain bike park in Victor, or a bike park in Victor. Most recently, of course, our programming has really gone virtual. We did a Haudenosaunee juried art show, meaning artists from our Six Nations Confederacy, and it was a juried art show. We had 111 pieces entered. We then juried that show. We select jurors that come from the area here. People who are doing in one way or another. For example, one is the owner of K-Art this year. He was a part of our jury. And we award prizes for second, third. We also, of course, the work is for sale. The good news is we sold about 25% of the work, which really made us very happy. And so the artists, some of the artists received prize money. That, of course, also helped them. This has been a time of year when our artists have been hurt a lot because a lot of outdoor venues didn't happen at all. And other things that were planned, festivals and so forth, didn't happen. And so our artists have been hurting. And this is one way we can help them out. As other people were saying, of course, our reach is much broader when we're doing virtual programming. I'll just give one example, and this is not art, but we commemorate every year a treaty that was signed in 1794 between the Six Nations, Iroquois Confederacy, Haudenosaunee, and the United States. November the 11th, this year, we commemorated that treaty again. Because we do it in the city of Canandaigua, where the treaty was signed, the city imposed upon us a limit on how many people could be there. And so there were roughly 25 people there on site. But the broadcast of this, the virtual broadcast, we reached 14,000 people. We, of course, have never had 14,000 people show up on the lawn of the Ontario County Courthouse. We've had a high of 5,000 plus, but so to have this kind of reach, of course, that's great. It isn't necessarily bringing us income, but it certainly is making people aware of who we are and really making people aware of the treaty. We sponsor this event every year as just one of our events. There are challenges, of course, with virtual programming. If the connection isn't good and something goes wrong, it's very frustrating for those trying to watch. So we really have been working on making our programming good and also making our connections good and all those kinds of things. We're just in the process of really doing a redesign of our website because, again, we recognize how important that is. And the people who will do that, I wish they were here with me because they could speak better to it. But thanks for this opportunity to talk with everyone and share.
Thanks, Peter. I wanted to invite Paul to unmute and share. Paul had an interesting comment and question regarding moving our programming online and some of those impacts.
Is this what we talked about yesterday?
Yeah.
Putting me on the spot. I guess there are a couple of things. The main observation, again, as a grassroots kind of organization, moving online really concentrates the work into a few hands. And I think that's a real vulnerability for our organizations moving forward. Like, where are the opportunities for volunteers to contribute meaningfully, and where are the on-ramps for new volunteers when, you know, a group of 6 people can do a whole film festival. They get burned out from it, but it's possible. And I think that's that was one of the hard lessons of this year, is just because you can do it with a few people doesn't mean you should, but we didn't have much choice. So it's a little bit like, you know, burning, I don't know, eating the seed corn, so to speak, where you don't have a lot left for the future because you've burned up what you had. That's kind of like one big observation with that. So.
Yeah, and you also shared, Paul, just to remind you, you mentioned something to me about, you know, the increased revenue we're all sending to Silicon Valley now.
Oh yeah. Thank you. That's, you know, and this came up a little bit before the Cooperstown Film Festival, where, you know, we spend our money locally on purpose, right? Being community-based, we're trying to elevate our communities, and particularly like moving to online programming, the revenue, like some of it goes to artists who are not necessarily from the community, and that's great. That's as it should be. But like online platform fees, credit card fees, all these things, it's money that leaves our community, and that's devastating. Especially when it's public funds that, you know, are supposed to be spent in our communities. So for instance, like this year, we didn't accept City of Rochester funds because we weren't able to spend any money in the City of Rochester, really. And that, you know, again, that's another thing where the long-term health of our arts organizations and of our communities is at stake. And I don't see any obvious solutions to this. We're relying on these platforms. Maybe there'll be some not-for-profit alternatives will emerge, but like, as long as, you know, Zoom we're on now, which is great, you know, we get to meet from all across the region right now without having to travel, which, you know, sometimes the weather makes that hard. But the fees that we paid to do it, they're now in California. They're not in our community. And so I'm, you know, for this, as a one-off for this year, it's maybe not such a big deal, but it's for the resilience of our arts and our communities. It's something we should be mindful of.
I'd like to add something, Blue, if that's okay. So it's been my experience working in the arts that arts workers are often asked to do more for less. And in this moment that we're in, we've had no choice. Again, we're asked to do, you know, to be excellent under extraordinary circumstances. And that's a real, I mean, it's always been a danger, but it's an even bigger danger now to see, oh, they're doing fine. They can make all these changes and survive, but it's not sustainable. And it's something that we should, you know, be aware has been going on for a really long time in our field. So I just wanted to say that.
I'd like to comment just quickly, because the point about volunteers, we actually just reached out to our group of volunteers, our docents, and asked them to come with us, or to come and do some programming with us that we will put online. Some of them have special skills, special knowledge that we'd like to take advantage of. And some of them just, you know, they're itching to get involved again because they haven't been able to. And so we made a point just this week of reaching back to our volunteers and encouraging them to come in and work with us on the programming we're providing.
This is Nicole from Book Arts. I also just wanted to comment that something that's been really helpful for us is to team up with our local startup community. So Western New York has a pretty robust, you know, tech startup community. And what's been really great is they have embraced us as a relatively small and relatively young organization. And they have a lot of great kind of insider info. Like if you need your website to perform a particular function, or if you need help getting in contact with the person who might be able to provide you with an educator's discount, or if you need to be linked up with, you know, an intern that can build a new portion of your website, they have a lot of resources and a lot of really energized people that are engaged and excited to help. So I would encourage you, if you can, to try to connect with that community where you are as well.
Hi, this is Sue. I would also like to, I know the Access Channel is on in Rochester and public media is here. I would encourage all arts organizations also to reach out to their production community, their public broadcasting partners, or in some cases low power radio stations, community radio stations, and community TV stations, because and I know that it's something that I've made a point. There's never been any funding from NYSCA for the people who help put arts out in media. But this may be time for us to be good partners in helping provide and increase the quality of what people can do on these kind of platforms. Good sound, good visuals. That's not going to wear down your content staff by having production people who know that stuff, who can work with you. And they do live in your community. In some cases, they're in colleges. In some cases, they're in the startup community. In some cases, they are working in media production already.
Anything else on this topic? John Messier, can I put you on the spot to talk about, you know, some of your pivots and experience related to studio visits?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would want to say about the word pivot is we've had to pivot. Everybody's here is pivoting 180 degrees, let's say, but I like to remind everybody that you can pivot further than that, and we can get to an after time that is at least close to what the before time was. So I'm not, I don't reside in pessimism through this year. I think through, you know, our audience attendance and the support we've gotten through various revenue streams from our audience and our community at Hall Walls, you know, it's a sign to me that people value culture and want it to continue and want to participate in it. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. You asked about the studio program. In the before time, you could scroll down on Hall Walls' website to a tab that said studio visits, where I would usually set up a schedule for 2 to 3 months of selected days and times that anyone within, let's say, an hour or so of Buffalo could sign up for a studio visit. And I would go out, or I'd take my assistant with me, or take another curator from town and do studio visits in person. We haven't been doing them at all. And I haven't talked about pivoting. You could fault me for not pivoting to Zoom studio visits. And maybe that betrays my age and my old schoolness, that I want to see people's work in a studio visit environment in real life, and I want to talk to them in real life, and I want to, you know, be in proximity to them. So at the moment, you know, and I think most people are, you know, are being safe, but you know, I have an underlying condition that I don't want to step into somebody's basement studio and find out I've been exposed going into their home. So I really look forward to that, the time where we're in vaccination land and most people have been vaccinated, and I can start up that studio visit program again, because that's been one of our most important services to the field that we've maintained the last few years, which I started because I started to notice that artists didn't ask for studio visits, and some of them, especially younger ones, didn't really seem to know what they were. When I asked them for a studio visit, they would say, well, I don't have a studio. Is it okay that we still visit? I have to say, yes, you can sit down at a coffee shop with me with your laptop. So it's been a bit of a process of educating, especially younger artists, about that system of dialogue that's so important to our field. But you know, it's a fair enough criticism that I haven't pivoted the studio visit program to an online version. I'm just reluctant to do that, and it's, you know, as you all have experienced. I mean, Zoom has its limitations too, and someone could hold up an artwork in front of a screen, or they could share their screen with me, but it's really not the same experience as talking in person. It's not the same as having a real, it is a dialogue that stepped backwards half a step and isn't quite as fulfilling. But I do look forward to, you know, picking that up again in the after time.
But John, you were doing these wonderful Zoom check-ins with your artists.
You know what? Yeah. You're right. Thank you for noticing. Yeah. During quarantine, I did do a series of Zoom meetings that I called virtual. I called them long distance studio visits or something like that. But we didn't really talk about their work. Very quickly, because it was quarantine and I was talking to artists that had shown at Hall Walls, and they were all over North America, I was basically like, how are you? How are things where you are? What is life like where you are? We didn't really talk about art. We talked about life because that was the more pressing concern. And I did a few dozen of those. And I took that until we, you know, came back into the office in early July. And those were fun and they were great. And it was really nice to see artists that we'd worked with in the past and hear how they were doing it. It was very compelling to hear their versions of what life in California was like versus Manitoba versus Brooklyn, for example. And so I did do those, and I did call them studio visits, but they weren't really studio visits per se. They were socially distant check-ins, you know, mental health check-ins with artists. And they're still on our website if you want to look at any of them.
Thanks, John. Any other comments or thoughts on studio visits? Maybe not so relevant for some of our venues.
Well, I mean, I think the whole conversation is to be shifted towards the humanity of the arts, and that this idea that we're going to, you know, crank out numbers and quantities of shows and exhibitions, and that artists are going to be, you know, having portfolios to just reveal. That's all changed. That's never going to be like that, at least in the short term. And I think that something like a just check in, like a, you know, checking in with the artists and connecting people, audiences, to like the human beings that are artists, that, you know, a lot comes out of that I like this moment breaking through the gallery wall in a way, like breaking through the, like, you have to show up and pay a ticket price and sit down in a seat and we count your head, like breaking through that to another way of experiencing the world we're in as a community. You know, I feel much closer to my own, you know, local community, but also a very vast, you know, global community, because we're able to sort of look face to face and hear each other talk, and not necessarily focus on the quantification of the art experience, as I think things had. It just seems right now like, who cares what the numbers are? Who cares what, you know, like we can't do that anymore. It's gone. Like we don't have, like, the idea that we would expect someone to show up and breathe the same air is just wrong. So we should think through that and find these other ways, and we are. I think that's the beauty of the creative community that we're in, is that we have these creative solutions to really getting to, you know, how do we use our resources to support each other and to support our you know, the idea of what the art, what this is time for art to be in action and you know, useful to the moment that we're in.
So maybe one, Sue, do you want to reflect on some of your comments and questions regarding audiences?
Well, I don't know if we have a lot of time, but I guess I would share with everybody. I think I know that a lot of us are thinking about how we look at this time seriously as to how we're diversifying our audiences, how we're engaging more directly with a community of audiences that may not look like our current loyal followers, that we must in many ways do that. And that maybe as we change, this is a real chance to really question what exactly are some strategies, and can we share some things that will help us attract and retain diverse audiences. I know at the Little, we have a Black Cinema series, and it's great, but the audience often, though we have many community partners from organizations, the audience often look like our regular loyal viewers, and we need our regular loyal viewers, or audience. Don't get me wrong, I say viewers, but I meant sitting in the seats. But we must find ways to engage with more genuinely with the broader community. Certainly the last year has shown us that, if nothing else. In addition to having to fiddle with this pandemic, we must be looking seriously at diversifying and engaging more directly with the broader community of audiences. And I think, if people have ideas on, I know it's a lot to take on at once, but maybe it works because we're taking them on at once. I don't know.
Well, it's a huge and important topic for us, and if no one else is going to comment on that, we can always continue this conversation. Oh, John, do you want to?
Well, I'll just mention in passing, in September, we couldn't have our resident artist, Vicki Bennett, fly in from United Kingdom for obvious reasons. And she had a big residency project that was funded by the NEA. And she also works under the title, the name People Like Us, and has been at WFMU for many years. And one of the parts of her residency, we did do her gallery installation with her video installation and new sound piece. But a big part of her residency was that she, and this was something she thought of prior to the pandemic, so it would have happened anyways, but she created, from the money we gave her, she created a series of micro commissions where she called on a lot of artists, about 20 artists at least, to produce sound or video works that she then put into a playlist that was housed at WFMU. And so that was kind of like a curated show, within the overall project. And I don't think we ever got numbers on how many people saw that, but I mean, a lot of people are, pay attention to WFMU. And so that was a really unique thing that was already planned, that played into the circumstances we found ourselves in, and worked really well. It was up for at least the 2 months of the show at the WFMU website.
Thanks. Since we're approaching 12, maybe I can ask Karen, do you want to offer any wrap up or parting words? And just a reminder, everyone, we have recorded this, and I'll get with Galen and Karen, and we'll talk about an edit and continuing to share the results of this conversation, and hopefully look toward more future iterations.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
Okay. I have to say, first off, just how great it is to see your faces. There's many of you for years I just haven't seen because we've not been able to travel or circumstances outside of the obvious, just didn't allow. And it really is wonderful. It's very heartwarming. In fact, we've all worked so closely together over all these years. So thank you again. I am a big fan of pen in hand, and the conversation's been great. It's really been interesting. I have at least 4 pages of notes that I'm going to go back through and sort of summarize. We, of course, have shared a lot in this conversation. That I shared a lot of experiences and learning moments that I think are quite universal, but there's some really boundary pushing moments in this meeting as well. And I really appreciate that. The most recent, Susan, you were talking about how do we continue to diversify? What are the ways to diversify audiences? We need to broaden. Well, that is something we can return to. We could even return to it through another Zoom session such as this. And NYSCA staff has definitely been working in this area very, very seriously. And we do have some tools, and we know some people who have tools, so we can come back to that. The idea of humanity, I think, is extremely important. It's a moment where our individual and collective humanity has been deeply, deeply touched and brought back to mind. I love love some of the project ideas. And there's a couple of things, if you'll bear with me. The idea too of resiliency, or being resilient, is not sustainability. That is something I'm definitely gonna take with me out of this. And one thing I hadn't thought about at all was the impact on local economies as a result of the film festivals and going online. I do think there are ways that we can address this, because that's, of course, part of our challenge right now, is to break through any walls that we currently see. But that really has a direct impact on the state, as well as our communities, and therefore domino effect around the arts, everyone. So that's definitely something to dig into as well. Connectivity, access, media, that is a big one of mine. Digital divide has been huge for me for many, many years. And I don't know how yet, but I firmly believe that in some way we can collectively come together, and we're not going to lay fiber optic and, we're, et cetera. But I really believe there's some way we can address this if we put our heads together. And new way of working, new way of thinking about it, as opposed to the corporate model, which of course the industry model is our model. So one or two others, let me just go back. Again, the last thing I'll leave you with here is just this. It's not a well-formed thought yet, but it's an instinct and it's a feeling. And there's something about this universal experience that we're having through hardship in relationship to expanding community and our concept of community. And I've seen this across the state with my organizations. I say that, in my portfolio, which is about 250 organizations or so, the concept of community has expanded in this moment. And of course, that's related to new audiences, et cetera. But we're pushing boundaries here in these concepts, in this concept. And I really, again, believe it's something that's going to lead us to new frontiers. So we have opportunity here, and it's not just a catchphrase, and it's not just something to throw out. But so we'll continue working, continue listening, and I'm happy to come back and listen and do this again anytime. And I want to thank Galen again. I want to thank Blue, I want to thank the NYSCA staff and Deborah Ronan. It's so wonderful to have you here with us as our council member, and also a great champion of the visual arts. So that's just a giant, big thank you to close. So that's it. Thanks.
And thank you, Karen, for making time for us.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So watch for the video. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.